Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya is often how we greet other Buddhists, Kalyana Mita, noble friends, in India. So you may see in the comments often I'm addressed, or the hello is Namo Buddhaya to me, and I will respond Namo Buddhaya. Even the monks will put their hands in Anjali when saying Namo Buddhaya in place of Namaste, because you are paying homage to the Buddha, whereas Namaste is a sign of respect to the person in front of you. As we're having an Indian themed week, talking about transition from India to Thailand a little, I thought I would just clarify that point. And continuing a little with this Pali lesson, anumodana. This means rejoicing in gratitude with you. So it is rejoicing in gratitude mutually with the person giving as the recipient, because you are also rejoicing in their gratitude for having the opportunity to give. Because as we know, dana is the first of the 10 parami, the qualities, perfections in this Buddhist practice that one develops and also derives a great deal of pleasure and happiness from. We always love to give, and it's often said better to give than to receive. So we rejoice in that with this word anumodana. Anumodana is often used at the before or during or after the blessing ceremony in the morning, when we receive sanghadana of people coming to the sala to offer our meals and other requisites. Sadhu, often or usually quoted 3 times, sadhu, 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 means excellent, wonderful and marvellous. Excellent, wonderful and marvellous. So when we say anumodana, sadhu, 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 as monks do in appreciation for offerings, we are saying rejoicing in gratitude with you, excellent, wonderful and marvellous, excellent, wonderful and marvellous, excellent, wonderful and marvellous. Excellent, wonderful and marvellous for the punya. Punya is the Pali word for merit. Merit being the good karma you have gained by your good actions of body, speech and mind. And as you know, as I've just mentioned, Kalyana Mita, this is the Pali expression for noble friends. If you like, noble friends on the path, this Buddhist path of practice. It really literally translates, though, as beautiful friends. So we put it all together and we are saying that we are rejoicing in gratitude with you, excellent, wonderful and marvellous, my beautiful friends. So, to you, I will say, anumodana, sadhu, 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 to you, my Kalyana Mita. And this is in appreciation for all of the support you give me and the encouragement that I receive each and every day, with all of the excellent, wonderful and marvellous comments for making these talks, putting these videos on here. Also for subscribing and for continuing to watch. The number of subscribers continues to rise, the number of views continues to rise. But this isn't the important thing. It's not about statistics and numbers. What I do pay attention to And what is important is the hours that are watched. And it is hours, because you get another statistic that isn't so obvious, and that is watch time hours. So it's all well and good people clicking on this and then going to something else, clicking on this and going to something else, and generating large numbers of views, and people subscribing and subscribing and subscribing. But if they're not really watching, these are just smoke and mirrors, a mirage, if you like, an illusion to whether or not people are actually interested. But when I look at the watch time hours, and I have no idea what they are at the moment, the number, because I haven't looked at it for a long time, but it's in the thousands, and that tells me people are actually watching these videos for some time. And many of the videos on here, there are 1,300 videos, only about 300 of those are long videos. The rest of them are those little short ones. So they don't make up any watch time hours. But from the videos that I've made each and every day for nearly coming up to a year, it's 11 months now, they are being watched. And that is what I'm thanking you for watching the videos, because if nobody watched them, then I would have stopped making them a long time ago. And then the other gauge of interest is this interaction we have through those comments that are very valuable on this platform, because I get feedback from you as to what you're watching, what you think, and that directs me as to what to say next in the next talk, really, as well as, of course, your questions. And not only, hopefully, is it helping you, for me, to answer your questions, or try to at least share my point of view, it helps me with my practice. This, to me, is very much part of my practice. 1 hour a day talking to you in the evening, 1 hour a day in the morning, replying to your comments and emails. Why is it my practice? Because I am reflecting also then on the Dharma. I am reflecting on what I have learned, and therefore by speaking aloud sometimes, opening your heart, your understanding to others, you listen, you hear, and you learn, but you also reinforce. So one of the best ways to learn is to share. I won't say teach, I'm not a teacher, I'm sharing what I have experienced. But to reinforce my learning from my experiences, I'm sharing those experiences with you, my Kalyanamitta, and I am very grateful for that opportunity to do so. So I wanted to make that absolute point at the beginning of this video, before I answer any more questions, to really reinforce and show my appreciation to you all, my Kalyanamitta, for watching. And also, of course, I have received material goods, anything from like this very microphone that is enabling you to hear me, the wire that goes from there to here to make this happen, these kinds of things, coffee, toothpaste, various bits and bobs that are counted as requisites as well, and not forgetting, of course, the support I get in Thailand. But each and every day, the people that come and they feed me each and every day, and they provide the support in that respect of dana, but also the accommodation here, my kuti in the forest, and robes and medicines and transport and such like. This is also very valuable too. But I see those people face to face each and every day, and we give them blessings and we say Anumodana, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So it's you particularly I wanted to address because you're not here with me every day. Well, you are maybe if you watch these videos, and at this time it is appropriate for me to do that. Simply show my appreciation. And also some financial contributions have come in via the PayPal link, which I took away a long time ago but was asked about it, so I put it back again. This, one of the lay people here, whom we would describe as a kapia. A kapia is a temple boy, but he's a grown man. He's about my age, and the brother of the abbot here, he's our kapia. He does things like he takes me to my eye hospital appointments, because I have those quite, well, not that regularly now, but occasional checkups at the eye hospital because I'm old and have to have my eyes checked. But he does that, drives us there. He also helps out in the morning with us, bringing us back from the town to here, to the sala, otherwise we'd be very laden with all the food and offerings we receive in town. We can't walk all the way back up the mountain. It's fine to walk the mile there in our bare feet, but to walk back would be quite tricky. So he does that, and this Monday he's taking me to the eye hospital again. So I'm going to use that opportunity and some of the financial contributions that you've very generously, kindly sent in as dana, to try and get a different internet package, because I've learnt that there is no 4G here, which is why perhaps it's very difficult to make these uploads. And with the weather, I think maybe I'm having some difficulties. Some bits are missing and please report this if you're getting videos and watching them, because I don't watch them. And there's bits missing, let me know, and then I can try and address the problem. But the first thing we're going to do, if he can stop on the way to the hospital on the way back on Monday at a phone shop, is I might try and get him with that money to get a 5G package, because although they don't have 4G, and I don't really know anything about this stuff, but they do have, from some research, have 5G in this area. And at the moment I'm uploading these videos with 3G, which I understand is quite old-fashioned. Now, whether or not this works or not, I don't know, but I think it's relatively inexpensive to get a different SIM and try it out, so I will do that. And then maybe in the future also look at upgrading the camera situation, the phone here, to just make it a little bit of a maybe better quality or easier to upload, whatever becomes necessary. So I'll now, having said that, move on to my questions. And before I do, or not my questions, your questions, before I do, I had from a subscriber. There are also some questions from the same subscriber, I'll check in a minute, but a suggestion, not a suggestion, a comment of a, what nature, how do I describe it? Anyway, I'll tell you what he said. He said, I can't remember exactly his wording, but it's lovely. In my English, the way I speak, I'm often apologizing, saying sorry. And he pointed this out, just that. And he said, I think it's an English, he didn't say this word, but colloquialism, I think is what he meant. So it's a kind of a conditioned thing in the English language, with British people, that we're always apologizing. So I thought it was quite a sweet and lovely comment. And it's also actually something I would thank him for, Anumodana, because, you know, it's this kind of correction, these suggestions, that not only are useful to help improving whatever it is I'm putting on here, but for all of us in each and every day, and here always as a monk, whether you've been a monk for 3 years or 30 years, you're always in training. These 227 Bhikkhu rules of ours are called the training. They're training rules in order to constantly be reviewing our behavioural patterns in body, speech and mind towards eradicating greed, hatred and delusion, and therefore desire and suffering, the cause of suffering, so then suffering. So we should, and we do, as monks, welcome admonishment, welcome telling off, welcome correction. Now this dear subscriber, he's not telling me off or even really correcting me, he's just making me aware, or it wasn't his intention, he was pointing it out, but it's made me aware and mindful, as in the commonly used term of the word, use of the word mindful, mindful of my speech, what I am saying, how often am I saying sorry. Now so far I've spoken for, I've got a clock today, 15 minutes, and I don't think I've said sorry once. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that hasn't been without considerable effort, because there have been some gaps, some pauses where I might have said sorry. Now this I'm sharing with you because what it's pointing to for me is the very important aspect of the Buddhist Noble Eightfold Path of right speech. We have right view, right intention, right wrong hand again, right view, right intention, right speech. Then only right action, livelihood, mindfulness and meditation. Effort, mindfulness and meditation. Right speech is very important. It's also one of the hardest for us to really keep a check on, because it's easily said and very difficult to take back. But if you'll notice, you'll often be speaking, saying something before even your mind, your thinking mind that is, has caught up. And suddenly you're backtracking in something you're saying, or you're wishing you hadn't said that. It's just come out, you've blurted it out. So to find any key element in your speech that you can use as a trigger to remind yourself to coming back to mindfulness of speech is a very useful tool towards your overall development, not only in the Buddhist Noble Eightfold Path being a very important constituent of Sila, which is actually 4 parts. If you break the Noble Eightfold Path into 3 categories, 4 of the elements are Sila, representative of Sila, one of them being right speech. So anything we're doing towards moral virtue, Sila, to improve that, is more than, well, exactly half of the Noble Eightfold Path. Then there's meditation, which is 2 or sometimes 3 parts of it, or 3 really, and then wisdom, which is just 1. But that's of course the hardest. That is really moving towards true understanding and getting really towards enlightenment. But our practice is always based on the solid and firm foundations of Sila, moral virtue. So anything you can do to remind yourself of right speech and to make yourself more mindful of your speaking, of your talking, what you're saying, how you are saying it, is a very valuable tool indeed. So this is why I say Anumodana and thank you for pointing this out, and my appreciation for that, because now being aware of that one word, it's just one word. When you make yourself, you can pick another word. Often you'll need someone else to point it out, but you can probably for yourself identify something you say or a mannerism or something you do in speech all of the time that if you notice it and take it away, it won't affect what you're saying, but it will certainly bring a lot of clarity, not only to what is being heard, but what you are saying to others, giving you the opportunity, with pause, to think a little more before you say what it is you're going to say. So it could be an expression, or even just a sound like or it could be a little phrase like I wonder if, or it could be a little phrase like and that. There's many little phrases that are just natural to our personalities, to the environment that we've come from. They're colloquialisms, they're expressions. Now, this isn't trying to strip away the sort of character and personality of your speech at all. It's just finding one little item in your speech that you can use as a trigger. So let's say it's Is quite common. Before this subscriber pointed out, sorry, I see it's coming out now. I had already noticed I was thinking about this and noticing I was saying a lot. Now, if you replace with a space, silence, not only are you creating more interest in from whom is the person who's listening, because the person who's listening is thinking of the next word, the next thing you're going to say. They don't know what the next thing you're going to say is, but they can't help. People find it very difficult to listen. They want to predict, and you do this yourself. People don't like silence. There are no clues to the next word. People like there are no clues to the next word. They like a continuing flow. It kind of rolls. When you break it down a little, it does make it clearer for the listener. It also makes it clearer for you as the speaker. Now, this is not a lesson in speaking, because I'm certainly not experienced in that. It's a technique of developing mindfulness of speech, and therefore improving this very difficult to manage part of the Noble Eightfold Path, right speech. Given those spaces, you do get that opportunity to think of the next word, just slowing it down without actually slowing it down. So you don't have to speak unnaturally slowly to give yourself more time to think about what you're saying. You just take out the filler, the clutter, which of course just leads to untidiness. So, thank you for that, subscriber. It got me onto speaking about right speech, a very important part of the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, I do have some questions. It's very humid here. Now, I think when I was in India, in the monsoon time, I was continually walking around, literally up to my unmentionables in water, and not clean water either a lot of the time, because there's more flatlands there. Of course, there's lots of mountains up north, but in southern India, where I was, there's a lot of flatlands and rice paddies, and all of this just merges into one. And where I was living on the coast, I was up on a rock a lot of the time, but I moved down to the lower levels in the nice weather, And come the monsoon season, it flooded, and I was always wading through water. But it didn't seem as humid as here. Here is very humid. Now it's beautiful. I'm not wading through water because I'm on a mountainside, and I guess the water just washes into the sea. Where I was in India, the village washed into the sea. Half the village was gone one morning when I woke up. So this was a surprise. I had to wade a long way in water just to get to the track, the road, to walk into town to get food. And it was very difficult with lockdowns and things like that, albeit very short and intermittent, but with the kindness of other people staying there, I did get fed. And this will bring me on to the questions I've got here, this very next question. But yes, what I was going to say is this here, which I hadn't really noticed so much before when I've been here. I think I've only stayed in Thailand for one complete monsoon season, Vasa, and that was in the early stages, so that was about more than 5, 6 years, 7, 8 years ago now. So it's long forgotten. I don't remember it being this humid. This is so humid. You cannot. I'm trying to dry this bowl here with the fan, which I've turned off for now, but this is the only way you can do it, and it's been here all morning, all day now, since this morning, and it hasn't dried. And this has, from the warmth of my body, managed to dry. So these are some of the difficulties we come across. You don't need to know all that, do you? I'm not saying sorry. Hello, I'll get on with the questions. Time. So 10 to. This is the point, you see. I've noticed if I go over 40 minutes, the phone overheats, and also it's very difficult to upload. I think I've mentioned that a few times. So I'm going to look at this situation on Monday on our journey. How easy that's going to be, I don't know, because I'm in an area people don't generally speak much English. The eye hospital is wonderful. My doctor speaks very, very good English, no problem at all. I particularly chose one where I know a lot of expats, not tourists, but people whom here are a long time who don't speak Thai go to. That's not the nearest hospital, but it's one where I knew that it would be much easier to deal with than a local place where it's a little bit difficult. Because the Kapia, he speaks English. He's the brother of the abbot here that I was just talking to. So it's easy to say to him, look, here you are, there's going to be some money in this. I have a trustee account, you see, which is where any money for emergencies is held, and for these kind of purposes, and he can get that money out and then go and buy whatever's necessary, because of course I don't receive or handle money. So that's how that works. Like I mentioned the other day about getting a metro ticket for the train, I can use that same card for that purposes, but I only in emergencies need to. It's never necessary. I haven't had to use money myself at all since I've been here, and not very much at all in India either, although a little bit sometimes on buses and things, but normally speaking not necessary. So on that point, yes, the first question ties in very neatly. Hello Bhante, are the people that offer you dana in India Buddhist? I get the impression there aren't many Buddhists in India. So the answer is yes, mostly they were Buddhist. I lived in a vihara for the main time when I was being fully looked after by lay Buddhists when I was in India was last Vasa, 3 months staying in PUNKHA, a small town, quite a large town I suppose actually, but by Indian standards a small town, outside of Bangalore in South India, about 70 kilometers away from Bangalore where my main monastery is. They were all Buddhists and they fed me. Where I was living on the coast, it was a Hindu pilgrimage place, so there were no Buddhists there at all, apart from a few tourists, English, French, Russian, Ukrainian, whom were Buddhists and used to come for guided meditation and ask me questions and things at around this time of the evening, which is why it's nice to do this at this time of the evening. It's become part of my pattern to speak to other people in English about the Dharma and meditation. Part of my routine. So it's nothing out of the ordinary at this time, which is around 20 past 5 to 6 o'clock. This time, any time, 5 till 7, whatever, is a nice time for me to spend a little bit of time in discussion of the Dharma. Not sampapalapa, which is the Pali word for idle chit-chat and gossip, and one of my favourite words. But yes, they were Buddhists, but not in the Hindu places where I stayed. And also I used to go on alms round through the Muslim quarter. A lot of places are sort of separated by religion in some of these cities and towns. I used to walk through on alms round through the Hindu part, the Muslim part, and some other part which I didn't know what it was. And they all used to buy me chais, which are those little teas that they have there, and give me little snacks, biscuits or things like this. So I did quite well out of all. It's very ecumenical, India, generally speaking. You hear that there's all unrest between religions, but generally speaking they all get on and live quite close together very well. But mainly, yeah, I was supported by Buddhists, and my monastery is very well supported by thousands of Buddhists. Now, in answer to your question, you get the impression there aren't many Buddhists. Well, that would be the case because it's such a huge population. I think the country is 1.8 billion, I think, something like that. It's pretty much close to China now. So it's yeah, I don't know the numbers anymore, but it's like makes up a good percentage of the entire world. So actually there are literally millions of Buddhists in India, but you wouldn't think so because there are even more billions of Hindus and billions of Muslims. So they fall into a very small, and it's not really a recognized religion of India anymore, strangely enough, considering it's where Buddhism comes from. But look at Jerusalem. It's not a Christian. I don't think it's. I don't know for sure, but it's not. I don't think a purely Christian country. It's anyway, not sure about that one. But often religions start somewhere, then they spread out, and then it may get lost a little bit. But in terms of the Buddhist population of India, there are a huge number, largely as a result of Dr. Ambedkar back in the 1950s, whom was also responsible for writing their constitution, whom as a movement to try and bring the caste system, to eradicate the caste system, this level of that you're born into these castes of, say, we have working class, middle class, upper class, but there are far more. I'm not going to go into it all the detail, but there are far more in India, and you're born into it, and it's identified by your name. So it's very hard to get out of these castes, and because the Buddha, coming from India, knew this, he said there are no castes. You are become a monk, whatever caste. You can be a Brahmin, which is like the upper educated religious godly class, if you like, or you can be someone who literally puts the cloths or takes the cloths and puts them around the dead bodies and cleans up all of the toiletry areas and this and that. Doesn't matter. You come and you join me as Buddhists, irrespective of your caste, or we would say class. So Dr. Ambedkar chose this Buddhist religion as being a very good vehicle to help try and eradicate the caste system. He converted millions of, it would have been the lower castes, the bottom castes, into Buddhism, where they could change their name. Often they changed their entire family name, and adopt Buddhism as their religion from the Hindu religion or Muslim religion, but it was mainly Hindus coming into Buddhism because it's very close, with the exception of all the gods. But even in Buddhism there are all the gods. They're just not treated in the same way as in Hinduism. In fact, Hinduism takes the Buddha as one of their gods. He's the ninth avatar, they call it, but incarnation, you could say, of Vishnu. So there are, I think, 12 or 14 avatars of Vishnu, so reincarnations, and the ninth was the Buddha. But that aside, he converted millions back in the 50s. Now, because it was whole families, they've become now second, third, fourth generation Ambedkarites, they're called, Ambedkar Buddhists. And they wear white often, walking around, well, especially when they're coming to see monks at viharas. And there are literally millions and millions of them all over India. But you wouldn't know from just looking at it from the outside. This is also why there are very many little viharas all over India, which is where I always used to be able to find in those areas somewhere to stay. Now, in addition to that, of course, there are the Tibetan Buddhists who were exiled from Tibet by the Chinese, also around the same time, in the 50s, and came into India, northern India. But in South India, where I was, there are two huge Tibetan settlements, which are now, again, third or fourth generation. But they keep themselves to themselves very much. They have their own communities, create their own farming and industry, so they don't really get involved with other traditions or require support from outside. They just needed somewhere to go as exiles, and this is where they settled. So yeah, India has a very good solid backbone and base of very strong and faithful Buddhists, without a shadow of a doubt. It is a very good place to be for a monk. It has its difficulties in unrelated aspects. As a foreigner, visas and things, well, as a British foreigner, visas are very difficult. It's how I've come to be here, in fact. But other than that, yeah, you can, as a monk, go and live in India and be very well looked after. You will be looked after by the Hindus, by the Muslims, by the Sufis, by the whatever. But you'll also always be looked after by the Buddhists. And as a monk, they will look after Buddhist monks extremely well. Very generous nation and a very generous community of Buddhists there. So yes, that's a good question. This is a bit of a random question. I have a question. Is it okay for a Theravada monk to drink from his bowl? This is my bowl. Touching the bowl with the lips. Okay, well, there's not a specific rule in the Vinaya about that. In the 75 Sakya training rules, there are lots of instructions as to how we eat. We mustn't fill our cheeks. We mustn't chippa chappa, that is in Pali, chippa chappa. Slap out, we mustn't lick our fingers. Very specific, but there isn't one for letting your lips touch the bowl. In Thailand, I use a little metal spoon, a Thai. It's like a cross between a spoon and a soup spoon, because they don't eat with their hands here. But in India, I would just eat with my hands from my bowl. If you're in a place where you're getting water to drink and there's nothing to drink with, then you probably wouldn't use your bowl. It doesn't look good, and it's also quite big, as you see. This is on its stand, but even off its stand, it would be big, and you'd probably have food in there. But we can, and I have seen this done, use the lid. The lid's over there. I use it as a little tray to keep my cup on and my bottle of water. I fill the tray with a bit of water, and then that stops the ants going into my cup of water or coffee, as is usually the case, because they don't want to swim. It's like a moat around my cup. And if ever you have we're not really supposed to bring the sweet drinks from the nampana shed. Nampana is the Thai word they use for the drinks shed. And the drinks shed has got an ice box with some nice little sweet drinks, like equivalent of Pepsi or Cola or something like this. So we should drink those there, but occasionally I'll come bring one of those back here. You must put it in this middle of a moat of water, I've discovered through years of experience, on my bowl lid, and then it stops the ants going in your drink. Because one ant, tiny there, these tiny ants, they'll find anything in here sweet. You put something on the floor there, it will find it. Then there will be millions and millions and millions of ants, all in a line, and you leave them. They will completely clean that space, that area, take that sweet. So you drop a little piece of watermelon on the floor there. An ant will find it, it will go back, tell all its friends. They'll all come in a line, very neatly, like a motorway, and it gets thicker and thicker, the line. Two-way traffic, all going that way and that way, that way. Under the door, out there, or wherever you are. Same in India. I used to do it on purpose during the monsoon season in India, just for something to do, to just watch them. Very interesting, and better than any form of other entertainment, better than Netflix. And they'll completely clean that area and take it all away. So we shouldn't sweep them all out of the way. They're doing good. But at night I do sweep the floor away of the termites, because I do worry that, I don't know whether you can see, but the door frames are being eaten, the wood is being eaten, there are holes in the floor. This is just some lino stuff on top. I don't really want them eating me, and they can nip occasionally, and it feels horrible when they're crawling on you. So I just sweep them out of the door, and often put the fan on. It's a blessing that we have these electric fans now. In India of old, you'd have the PUNKHA WALLAH. The PUNKHA WALLAH, a wallah is a kind of he would have been one of the lower of the castes, a worker. I wouldn't really call them a servant, but they do those kind of jobs. They are servants really, or were. A wallah. So you have a chai wallah, he's the boy on the train, he still calls himself the chai wallah, he sells chai. And he has a big hot vat of chai, and he goes around selling the chai. But you have a punkha wallah, because a punkha is the fan. And if you ever saw a program called It Ain't Half Hot Mum, you saw this Indian guy pulling the fan like this. Oh goodness gracious me. And he was called the punkha wallah, because the punkha is the fan and the wallah is the guy pulling the rope. And you needed this guy, because heavens, you're going to be just smothered in mosquitoes, and it's more for the insects than the heat. And I think, and as I'm learning now, in just recent times here, for the humidity, because without this fan, it will be dripping in here. Even with the fan, it's damp. So there we are. I'm digressing a little. I'm mindful not to say sorry. I do know the time today, remarkably enough. This is a first. And if I'm correct, I've already gone over that 40 minutes quite substantially. No, only a few minutes. So I'm going to try and answer one more quick question. Look, I've got a couple of questions, 3, 4 questions. One says, I don't know your name. Another one says, hello Bhante, what's your name? And another one is someone very kindly offering to give me a name because they don't know my name. And they have given me a name and asked me if I would accept it. Well, I can't actually accept another name. I have been given a name at my ordination of Bhante Dhammarakkhita. Dharma is the Dharma, as we talk about, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Rakkhita means protected by. So I'm protected by the Dharma, is my full Pali name, Bhante Dhammarakkhita. Bhante just means venerable. And then it's usually prefixed by Bhante, suffixed by Bhikkhu, which just means homeless, mendicant, monk, alms recipient, whatever. Bhikkhuni is the female version. So I am Bhante Dhammarakkhita Bhikkhu. And in India they like long names, and they say it beautifully. Bhante Dhammarakkhita Bhikkhu. Bhante Dhammarakkhita Bhikkhu. And my teacher there is sweetly calls me Dhammarakkhito. Dhammarakkhito. I don't know why that is, but it's kind of a nickname. But I was called in India also Bhante D, Bhante Dan even. In Thailand though, I'm known as Phra Dan. Phra is just monk, it means monk, or Tan means venerable instead of Bhante, Tan. But Tan Dan is a bit, actually sounds quite Thai, doesn't it? But to me it sounds a bit funny, Tan Dan. So it's not my choice, it just you happen to get called something and it's the way it is. It's a little confusing in Thailand. It's such an old tradition, and it's also different in different areas and regions, even different provinces it's different. But I'm Phra Dan, that's simple. My actual birth name is Daniel, my Christian name, as it is called there in my country. You're christened. It's Daniel, Daniel of the Lion's Den in the Old Testament Bible. So a Christian name, literally, and that gets shortened to Dan. So my name is just Dan or Phra Dan. I don't get too fixated on names. We're here to really let go of our identity, our personality view, and partly for this reason, although I didn't even think about it at the time, but I've kept it as is. I've never changed the name of the channel. It was English monk. It was English Buddhist monk living in India originally, only because that's what it was. That's what the videos were about, an English Buddhist monk living in India. They weren't really specifically about me personally. They were about the life of a monk, being an English one, living in India. And then I dropped the living in India really just because I'd moved from India to Thailand. Actually, I think I did it when I went to Nepal, and I wasn't sure whether I was going to be allowed back into India, and there was a while when I wasn't. So I thought best to change the name to make it simpler also. And I think now the channel is actually just, they have these short names for channels now, and it's just English monk. So if you want to find, say, a talk of mine about jhanas, if you just type in jhanas English monk, it will come up with that talk. If you type in jhanas, there's millions of talks. If you type in English monk, there's millions of foreign monks speaking in, or even you put English Buddhist monk, foreign monks speaking English, Dharma in English, you see, so it gets confusing. But English monk, I think you put it as one word or hashtag. I don't know how these things work, but it's something like that. It finds it very quickly. I learned this today because I had to find a link to send to somebody about a talk they were looking for and they couldn't find it. So that's why I mention it, because I've only just found it out myself and thought, oh, well, that's a quite handy way to find things. Out of 1,300 videos, then you do need a shortcut, because there isn't an index. Although that apparently can be done. I've seen it done very professionally on one of my favourite channels. So another monk, and I don't mind saying this is Ajahn Sona's channel. It's by far the most what's the word? Well, it's the wrong word, but I can only think of this: professionally organised, structured, easy to find things channel. But the content is what's important, not so much all of the indexing, and his content is second to none. He is a wonderful teacher, a wonderful monk, whom I have the utmost respect for and adoration for. He's slightly different to my own background and training and experience and the monks I've met, but then aren't we all? But he puts across the Dharma in a succinct, neat and tidy, easy to understand fashion, and that's what I always appreciate and like. I hope I can one day aspire to something, even a fraction of that standard, and convey this message of Dharma to you just as accurately as that. So I think that's my name. Also in the description under each of these videos is my name, how it's spelt, if it's at all required. It really isn't. Just hi will do. And that very short version of my own how I got to be a monk, because of course because I've also been asked again today that same question, even though I've just recently done a video about how I became a monk and my ordination experience. Now I'm being asked about what led to that. Well, that's in the description under every one of these videos, albeit I will elaborate on it in a future talk again at some point. I'm sure I've done that one before too, but I'll talk about it again soon and expand a little bit on it with some more stories. Well, I didn't answer very many questions today, but hopefully what I've talked about can be useful to you. And once again, Anumodana, sadhu, 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 and I can say this. And Sukhihotu, Sukhihotu, Sukhihotu. This means Sukhihotu means be happy.